Good day, folks. So for today, I'm going to do a video on something a little different. And what I'm going to do it on is these little alcohol cooking stoves I make for backpacking. These particular ones made out of aluminum beer bottles. And the reason I'm going to do that is I had sent one to a fella, and I needed to give him some instruction on how to use it. So I figured if I'm going to make him a video, I might as well just make a video and upload it. So these are things I started making quite a few years ago. And I've made a variety of different types, designs, different materials. Here's a little one made from, I believe that was a Red Bull can. And I'll throw some pictures up here of different ones that I've made. Now, these particular stoves operate on alcohol and primarily ethanol. And this is ethanol. Ethanol is a grain-based alcohol. Think when they make moonshine. When they're cooking off the product, you get two separate types of alcohol. You get the stuff you drink, which is ethanol, grain-based, and then methanol. And methanol is wood-based, and methanol is the stuff that'll make you go blind if you drink it. You can buy methanol. It's often sold in paint stores as a paint thinner, and you can use that. You just don't want to get it on your skin or anything because it can absorb through your skin. So you're safer to use ethanol. You can also use liquid heat, which is a gas line antifreeze and water remover. Now it comes in two types, yellow bottle and red bottle. You can only use the yellow bottle. Do not try to use gasoline or other petroleum-based products to do this, because it's going to be a mess. You can use isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohols, but they're not as pure a form of alcohol. They've got other products in them, and they will leave a dark, sooty residue on your cook pots. How these ones in particular are made is you take an aluminum bottle, and I should have brought one with me, but you cut the bottom portion off, and then at the neck, just as it starts to taper to the same width as the rest of the bottle, you cut that off, you turn it upside down. If you can see down in there, and you probably can't, at the top of the neck, you cut the very top off where the cap seats, and then you cut some grooves into the bottle, like the top, and then you wedge it down inside. That creates a two-layer system. So you've got an inner layer and you've got an outer layer. So there's an air gap in there. What the holes in the bottom do is allow the gas vapor to go into that inner layer. And then that gas comes out through these little holes I drilled here. Now, I typically will drill a large hole, small hole, large hole, small hole. And that, when the flame blooms, much like it will on a gas stove, you get flames that shoot out farther and not so far. So that creates more surface area that the flame is connecting with your pot. Usually, it takes about maybe an ounce of alcohol. You can see on this one, my markings, I timed it, took 1 minute, 41 seconds for the flame to flower. It took 2.5 minutes roughly to bring a cup of water to a boil. And the flame lasted for 13 minutes and 30 seconds. And I noted this one had a good flame on it. How these work will depend on temperature. If it's cold outside, the aluminum is going to absorb that cold. It will take longer for it to heat up and come to a flower. If you set it on a cold surface, it's going to absorb the cold from that surface, and it will take longer. If you put a pot of really cold water on it, say you put a pot of snow on it, then some of that cold is going to transfer into the stove and make it colder, so it will take it longer to heat up. So you're best not to set it on a cold surface. It works. I mean, I've melted snow with it and brought it to a boil. It just takes longer. But the warmer your stove is to start with, then the less time it takes to heat up. I'll often take a little bottle just like this, and they're kind of worn off on this one, but I'll make markings for, that gives me about an ounce of fuel. So I know I just pour down to the mark and I've got the right amount of fuel. We're not going to put all the fuel in it today. I just want to show you how it works. And, I don't want this to be a super long video. It's me explaining this already takes super long, but so you would just pour some in here. And then it doesn't hurt to pour a little bit in that base plate. And that base plate serves the purpose of allowing you to put a little alcohol in it, and also a bit of an insulator to the temperature of the surface you set the pot on, or set the stove on. And what it'll do when the alcohol in the base plate lights, it'll help heat up the outside. So while the alcohol on the inside is burning and heating the inner layer, that's heating the outer layer. So let's strike one up. Now, this is an alcohol flame, so it's not a bright yellow flame. So if you're outside and it's sunny, you may not see the initial flame. I had given one to a guy and I forgot to mention that to him. He lit it on a sunny day. He says, is that lit? He put his hand on like that and burnt the snot out of his hand. So always be cognizant that you may not see the flame in a brightly lit area. So there we go. That's burning right now, and you don't necessarily see it, but that's throwing heat. If I turn some lights off, we might see a little bit. See, so now you can see that flame. So what's happening now is as the alcohol is burning, the liquid alcohol is going to come to a boil. When it does that, gas will start venting out through the holes on the side. And once that does, that gas will ignite. And then your flower, I guess I call it, will bloom. So we can hear right now that the alcohol is starting to boil. And you'll hear a little hiss as it does that. I don't know if I can get you a visual on that or not. Oh, there's your flower starting to bud. So as those jets come out, there we go. So now you can take a pot and carefully set your pot on there. Try and center your pot as best you can. Now those will die down here in a second. And there they go, and they start to die down. And that's basically the lower temperature of your pot with the water in it is transferring down into the stove. So it's kind of reducing the heat. So the flame is reduced. I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but with the alternating size of the holes, like you can see some of you'll see a flame with a yellow tip to it, and then the next one has no yellow tip, and the next one is the yellow tip. The ones with the yellow tips, those are the bigger holes. Now, I didn't put a ton of water in here. There's only about maybe a cup in there. But you can see that's already starting to come to a boil. There's like maybe a little less than an inch of water in there. If you get a lid on your pot, it will boil faster. So I didn't put a lot of alcohol in there. That should die down any minute now. But if you're using it, I mean, I have actually cooked a steak, potatoes, and vegetables on one of these with a cast iron skillet, little cast iron frying pan. I just put 2 ounces of alcohol in it in a one I made that was a little bit taller. And there we go, it dies down. And I was actually able to cook steak in it. So that is how those work. Now be mindful. Your pot's going to be hot. So you'll want to, I usually have like a little fiber cloth or something like that I can grab it with and take it off. Grab with a set of pliers here. And also be mindful, do not immediately grab for your stove, because your stove is very hot because it is aluminum, it is metal, and it is going to hold on to that heat. Now like I say, I make these, I've made many different designs. They're aluminum. So the ones made from the aluminum bottles, they have a thicker wall, they're a little bit stronger. Ones made from aluminum cans like this are not very strong. So you'll want to, if you use something like this, have something to store it in to protect it. These large size Kinder Egg containers are awesome. They're watertight, they're strong. I've got here just 3 different stoves stuffed into this one. Oh, perfect. This was one here. I guess it popped apart, but there is the top of your bottle, cut just before it reaches the diameter of the rest of your bottle. And then you have your notches in the top. And that just wedges down in there like that. And there's an old basic cat can style one that have been used for years in ultralight camping. But they're great little rigs. If you're into backpacking, ultralight backpacking, they're pretty awesome. Good thing if you got a bug out bag or something like that. I mean, something like that doesn't take up a lot of space in a bug out bag, and they are extremely light. I use them in most of my cook kits when I go backpacking. Just as an example, here's a kit here. I use pipe insulation to make a housing for my pots, because one thing you can do is, rather than trying to actually cook an entire meal with the stove to conserve your alcohol, you can just bring your water or your contents to a boil and then stick it in this insulated housing, and that will hold the heat in, and then it will just cook in the pot. And you can see in there I've got a couple bottles of alcohol, ethanol, a couple of different stove options, lighter, little thing I made from the pipe insulation for grabbing onto your stove or your pot or whatever. This gadget here, when you put it together, is a windscreen. So it goes together like this, sits over your stove, and then when it's separated out, the pot actually nestles down inside, so the whole thing is enclosed in the windscreen. So I hope you found that a little bit interesting, and I hope the gentleman I sent the stove to finds that helpful. Here's another example of a windscreen I made, and that's just made out of aluminum. Or actually, sorry, that one's made of tin. So hopefully the gentleman I sent the stove to finds out a good bit of instruction, and hopefully you found it a little bit entertaining. And there's 1,000,001 videos on YouTube how to make these things. That's where I learned. partially from YouTube, and before YouTube was really huge, just on web pages with actual pictures and writing. You had to read stuff to learn stuff. Oh, those good old days. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. If you liked the video, please drop a like. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, throw those in the comment section below. If you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff, or just some general looking at knife videos, then please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell. And, knowing how to make something like this, you could be back in the woods and you're stuck, and you've got a bottle of booze and a can of beer. You could make something like that pretty quick out of a beer can, and you got a bottle of booze for some hard stuff for your fuel, and you can actually cook something or boil some water. They're great for boiling water to purify it. And you just throw one in your truck. It'd be pretty handy. You all have a good day.